Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the show. Fernando.
Welcome to the show.
Today we have a Ford Expedition. Focus of the video is not the Ford Expedition. The focus of the video is the fact that up in this rear view mirror here, it has a factory backup camera that does not come down to the new radio we're gonna be putting in because it's in the mirror. One of the most common questions we get a lot of them, how do I retain my factory backup camera? What's the process? Today what we thought we'd do is go through the process of retaining your factory backup camera so that you can add it into your aftermarket radio. Let's get going. The first step we take when integrating in a factory camera is we have to figure out, do they make an existing harness for the car? If there's a factory screen in the dash, chances are good they do. And where you want to look first are these websites here. First up would be pack-audio.com. In this particular case, we're looking at a Escalade. This is the factory backup camera retention. If we go into iData, when searching on the RR harness, over here on the side, reverse camera retained. If you're just looking for a harness, Scosh.com. They offer the CRTs and the CADs. These are factory camera retention harnesses, and sometimes they allow you to add cameras to factory radios. They have a whole list of these on their page. And then MetraOnline.com also has a whole bunch of them on their page. All of them basically works the same. You enter your year, your make, your model. Sometimes they need additional information, and then they'll list, as they do here, the access factory camera. So check there first to see if it is part of the kit. It's an add-on to a kit. There's 4 places. Go to all of them until you've totally exhausted your resources as far as hopefully finding an adapter for it. Once that's done, as in the case of this Ford, what do? Well, you're gonna need a couple tools. First and foremost, you're gonna need a digital multimeter. Secondly, you're gonna need some kind of a screen so that you can test to see the video coming from the camera. This is where people go immediately, oh, I don't have a test screen. You're putting a screen in the dash. You have a test screen. Get the radio wired up, you can use that as a test screen. Because as we go through the process, you're going to narrow down the amount of wires that you have, and it's going to become more obvious what wires are the factory camera wires. In our case, we have this. This is a CCTV camera tester. We have it listed on DNF tool drawer if you're interested in picking yourself up one. If you're a professional, you should definitely have one of these. Let's hop in the car and we'll get started. Naturally, the first thing you want to do is get the radio out of the dash, which it looks like Fernando's already done. For us, that's not where we're going. We're going up top because our camera's in the mirror. That's the guy right there. This little tiny image. And that's something to consider too. Sometimes that camera's quality is garbage, meaning it sucks really bad because it's only made to be played on a little tiny monitor where the pixels are really tight together. When you stretch it out to a bigger screen, sometimes they do become blurry. So don't be disappointed if you relocate your camera and all of a sudden it doesn't look as clean as it did on the little tiny screen. Our wiring is going to be up in this little piece here. It's easier for us to remove this in order for us to get to it. Sometimes they're also down one of the A-pillars here or here. Other times they run up through the headliner and they can come down way back there. It just depends on the car. The other thing too you want to test is to see if the factory backup camera comes on with the engine running or the engine not running. Now is the time you need to test that. Some cars, if the engine is not on and running, the backup camera will not come on. This is a lot of fun at the end when you're testing it and you're putting reverse and it's not working and you're like, what the heck is going on? Check that first. In this case, we didn't have the engine running, we just put it in reverse and it came on. That means we won't have to have the engine running in order to test our camera. In some cases, these are screwed in. In the case of the Ford, they just have 4 metal clips holding it into place. Ford does put this nice plastic bracket in here where there's 2 screws. Pull these 2 screws so we can slide this back and gain access to that wiring. This is cool. Check this out. So here's the factory wiring, and this is a metal clip. At some point, this wire got stuck behind the metal clip from the factory or from service or something. And car dealerships always say everything that happens to a car is our fault. Huh. Right. Looking at the wiring here, half of it goes this way and the other half of it goes that way. I'm gonna pull off this A-pillar just to see what I'm looking at. You definitely have some wiring coming down this side. Unplug the mirror and kind of get an idea of what you have for wire coloring. That way you can find it up top here and everywhere else. 7 wires coming into this mirror. Most cameras have 4 wires: power and ground, shield, and signal. It may also have a reverse wire. This mirror also has auto dim features built into it. There's wiring for that as well. The name of the game is to rule out some of the wiring, meaning just get it off the board. I'm gonna get some paper and my digital multimeter. The first step I do is write down all the colors in the harness. With my digital multimeter set to DC voltage, which is the line with the dash underneath it, I can then start trying to do away with some of my wiring. Put one test lead to ground, turn the car on, put the emergency brake on, and we want to test for reverse. Press the foot brake and put the car in drive. That'll allow you to rock back and forth between reverse and not have to keep pushing the foot brake. Get it into reverse, and what we're gonna look for is 12 volts. We found it. However, it is not changing when we take it in and out of reverse. That could mean a couple different things. One, it could mean there's data in the harness and that's what's turning this on. It could also mean that the power and ground for the camera is located somewhere else and this screen has signal sense, meaning when it senses a signal, it automatically turns on, and when it doesn't see a signal, it automatically turns off. If that's the case, what we're looking for is just a camera signal. We could solder on an RCA and just plug it into the back of the radio, and whatever's powering it up is down the line. We don't have to worry about it. I'm gonna remove some of the tape so I can expose the wiring up here, which is why I took this out. See if there's any twisted pairs that I can look for. First one I'm looking at looks like a coax style cable, which could be the camera feed wire, but it's a solid cable. I can't get through it. I'm gonna remove this little piece here that connects the mirror to the headliner. Now that we have this whole area here exposed, remove some of the tape, we're able to slide up this wire sheathing here. We can get to our wire and see our pairs. They have them all broken off. We have that coax style wire right here. We have another twisted pair, and then we have 3 other random wires going off to the side here. I need to grab my monitor and test those 2 wires. When testing camera wires, you're gonna get 2 screens. If you get one that looks like this, that's a rolling little staticky 1970s style TV, oh crap, there's nothing on, you have the wires backwards. If you flip them, you'll get a perfect image. This tells us something I was kind of hoping wouldn't be the case, because I wanted to be able to go deeper into this. In this case, we just have 2 wires here. They need an RCA. We can route them down into this, but we're not done yet. Now that we know which wires are camera, we have to write down on our piece of paper which one is positive, which one is negative. In this case, the white with a green stripe was positive, the brown with a purple stripe is negative. Cut these 2 wires, cap them off, and plug it back into the mirror and see what happens. Now, in case it needs to be said, when cutting wires off of a factory harness, make sure you leave enough wiring so that if you need to, you can solder the 2 wires back together again. We put some shrink wrap over the ends to secure them so that they won't do anything. And these, of course, are the ends we're gonna use for our camera. Plug it back in. We get a blue screen. So something is telling this mirror to turn on that monitor. And apparently there's 9 LEDs in it, because you can totally see it. It comes on for a minute and it shuts off. I don't like that. I need to find out why it's doing that. I'm gonna test the wires again. Nobody's perfect, and in this case, well, I'm not perfect. Somehow I missed this on the first go around. There is in fact a reverse wire in this mirror. Green with the black was playing possum on me. I might not have had my test probe in far enough. I don't know. Either way, write that down. This time we'll put shrink wrap over both ends, plug it back in the mirror, and test. That was it. That was why this was going blue. In this particular mirror, we had reverse and we had our 2 camera wires. Something else is feeding power to the camera. One other thing we want to check is, now that it's been in park, and leave it in park for, I don't know, a minute or so, is this camera still active? The reason we want to know that is on our aftermarket radio, it has a button to view the camera whenever you want. If it's still active, then we can retain that feature. If it's not active, then we can't. Our camera stays active all the time. Doesn't matter if it's parked, reverse, drive, the camera's on, that feature can be retained. Even though this one doesn't have the next step, which is the power, I'm gonna walk you through the process for that. Every factory camera that I've come across has been 6 volts. That's key. You need to look for the positive 6 volts. volts. And how that's done is exactly what we've been doing. We have our test lead and a ground. In this case, this is the ground for the factory radio. And we're going to test our positive lead for 6 volts. Those are usually the ones that are in the radio themselves, meaning there's a factory screen. Factory radio is putting out the 6 volts. Unplug and plug the harnesses until you find the harness that the camera is on. It'll go black. Plug it back in. You're going to want to probe the harness that's still plugged into the back of the radio until your meter says 6 volts. There again, cut the wire back because it's usually in its own little group. Usually it's twisted in with the camera wire. It's like 4 wires, 1 coax. When you find the positive 6 volts, look to see if there's any other wires around it, specifically not part of the coax. Take your ground terminal, put it in, and you should see 6 volts. If you flip them on your meter, you'll see negative 6 volts. Write it down on your piece of paper. In some cases with these camera mirrors, they work the same way. If you find the 6 volts and you need to obviously repeat that, PAC makes this guy. This is the Volt 39. This is designed to power 3 volts, 5.5 volts, 6 volts, and 9 volts. There's a little switch on here. You flick it to 6 volts, you hook this up, and this will power up your camera. The next step is to get an RCA onto this so that we can then attach it to the back of our radio. Any RCA will do. However, for us, we're going to use Stinger's X12 line. We have a nice male RCA. You have speaker wire. We'll twist ourselves some white and brown wire together. We'll run it down this side of the car, and we'll have this in the back to plug into the backup camera. We'll even put some yellow heat shrink on this so that we know it's a video signal and not a stereo signal. As far as the wiring goes for this, standard speaker wire will work. We're going to use an 18 gauge. Don't need anything thick. As you can see, these wires are thin, but you do want to twist them together. That'll help to reduce any noise that may be picked up on the run, just like they are from here. You could also put the connection here and run an RCA down. Whatever works for you and you're comfortable with. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you need a reverse trigger, like in this case, we're using a smart harness to power the radio, so we don't need this reverse trigger. But if you do, you can run that down also and use it. Tape up any wiring that you cut, replace it all, and put it all back to factory. In this case, we pulled out the wire for the signal from the harness. The ends are stripped and ready to solder on our new wiring. Once we run the wire over, slide the mount back into place. Unlike the factory, make sure that you don't get your wires pinched up inside of here. These run into the dash, the RCA soldered on, get the wiring for the radio all done, and we'll come back and take a look at it. The radio harness is complete, and we've plugged in our backup camera RCA. We covered it in the yellow heat shrink. One of the features we talked about was being able to view the backup camera while it's not in reverse. Kenwood has this cam button here. We can see what's behind us. The backup lines are part of the factory camera. It's visible, it's a little blurry. It'll still allow you to see what is behind it. If you hit the camera button again, it'll make it go away. And naturally you want to make sure that it works in reverse. And it works in reverse. Alright guys, that brings this one to an end. Fernando.
On to the next one, guys.
Thank you so much for watching. We hope you guys found this one useful. You guys have a great night as always. We'll see you later next time.
Bye.
Bye.